The lights of the old space station flickered like tired eyes in the dark. The corridors of Eden 9 smelled of metal and cleaning fluid, the kind of scent that never really left your clothes. Eli Turner moved slowly along the floor, his mop gliding over silver tiles that would never shine no matter how many times he scrubbed them. He had been doing this job for 10 years. The tools had changed, the bosses had changed, but the work had not. Eli was a simple man and he did not ask for much. A quiet place to sleep, one warm meal a day, and peace during his shift. Most people ignored him and that was fine with him. On a station full of proud aliens and busy merchants, a human janitor was invisible. He had learned that being invisible kept him out of trouble. It was late in the cycle when the lights dimmed again. A low hum filled the air, then silence. Another power outage. They were common on the lower decks where the older systems barely worked. Eli sighed and reached for his flashlight. He knew what to do, wait it out, finish his section, then go back to his small sleeping pod. But tonight was different. As he turned the corner, he heard a soft sound. It wasn't the hiss of pipes or the buzz of machines. It was a voice, quiet, shaky, almost afraid. He lifted his flashlight and saw someone sitting against the wall. It was a woman. She wore a simple gray uniform like the ones the station maids wore, but it looked too clean, too new for this part of the station. "Hey," Eli said, keeping his voice calm. "You okay there?" The woman looked up, startled. Her eyes were a pale silver color that caught the flashlight's beam. I think I got lost," she said. Her voice was soft, but there was something unusual about it. Too smooth, too careful, like she wasn't used to speaking common. "This deck's not safe during an outage," Eli said. "You shouldn't be down here. Where were you headed?" "I don't remember," she said after a pause. "I came down looking for supplies, maybe." Then the lights went out. She tried to smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. Eli studied her for a moment. She didn't look like most of the human workers. Her features were a little too perfect, her posture too straight. But he didn't want to pry. People came to the lower decks for all kinds of reasons, most of them trying to hide from something. "You hungry?" he asked. She blinked at him. "Hungry?" "Yeah," Eli said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small ration bar, plain, brown, and hard as rock. It was his last one for the shift. He broke it in half and held one piece out to her. "Here. Not much, but it'll keep you standing." The woman hesitated. "You would give me your food?" He shrugged. "Can't have you passing out down here. Makes more work for me later." He smiled, and after a second she took the bar. She bit into it carefully, then gave a small laugh. "It tastes terrible." "Yeah," Eli said, chuckling. "That's how you know it's the real stuff." For a few minutes, they sat in silence, listening to the hum of the emergency lights. The quiet felt heavy but not unpleasant. She looked at him again, studying his face as if trying to understand something. "You're not afraid of me," she said suddenly. Eli frowned. "Should I be?" "No," she said quickly, shaking her head. "I just mean, most people don't talk to strangers in the dark." He shrugged again. "You don't look dangerous." She smiled a little. "You don't know that." He grinned. "I've seen dangerous. You don't fit the part." Her smile faded, replaced by a strange expression, part sadness, part curiosity. "You humans are strange," she said softly. "You give when you have little. You speak kindly even when you have reason not to. Why?" Eli looked at his hands, rough and scarred from years of work. "I don't know," he said. "Maybe because someone has to. The galaxy's got enough people who take. Someone has to be different." The woman seemed to think about that for a while. "What's your name?" she asked. "Eli," he said. "Eli Turner." "And you?" She hesitated for a moment as if choosing her words. "Mara," she said finally. "Well, Mara, welcome to the lower decks," Eli said, standing up. "If the lights don't come back soon, I can walk you to the maintenance hub. It's safer there." Mara nodded slowly. "You would do that for me?" "Sure," he said. "You seem decent enough. And besides, I've got nothing better to do." When the lights flickered back on, the corridor filled with a pale glow. Eli picked up his mop, ready to move on. Mara followed him for a bit, asking questions about his work, what he cleaned, how long he had been there, why humans worked such hard jobs. "Because someone's got to do them," he said simply. "Doesn't bother me. I like things clean. Makes me feel like I did something that matters even if no one else sees it." Mara walked beside him in silence. Every now and then, she glanced at him as if memorizing his words. Her movements were graceful, too smooth for an ordinary person. There was something in her eyes too, something deep and unreadable. When they reached the end of the corridor, she stopped. "Thank you, Eli Turner," she said softly. For the food. And for not asking too many questions. Eli smiled. Everyone's got their secrets. Just try not to get lost again, all right? I'll try, she said. Then, before he could say another word, she turned and walked down the hall, disappearing into the bright white light. Eli watched her go, scratching the back of his neck. Something about her didn't sit right, not in a bad way, just in a strange one. She didn't move like the others, didn't talk like them either. He told himself it wasn't his business. He was just a janitor. Still, as he picked up his mop again, he found himself smiling. It wasn't often someone said thank you on Eden 9. That night, when his shift ended, Eli sat in his small room and looked out at the stars through the narrow window. The red sun burned faintly in the distance, painting the metal of the station in rusty light. He thought about the woman, Mara, and how her silver eyes had glowed even in the dark. He didn't know that far above him, in the upper decks of the station, an emergency meeting was being held among the Valyrian envoys. They were searching for their missing queen, who had vanished from her guarded suite hours ago. Down below, the janitor who had shared his last meal drifted to sleep, unaware that his small act of kindness had already changed the course of 2 worlds. The next few days on Eden 9 passed quietly. Eli went back to his usual work, mopping corridors, fixing small leaks, and making sure no one slipped on the wet floor. But something was different. Every time he walked the lower decks, he thought about Mara. He wondered if she was all right. He told himself not to care too much. People came and went all the time, but still he hoped to see her again. 3 days later he did. She appeared in the same corridor where they had first met, standing near a vent that hummed softly. This time the lights were bright and the power was stable. She looked more comfortable, her uniform neatly pressed, her hair tied back in a simple knot. But her silver eyes still stood out, bright and curious. "Hello, Eli Turner," she said. He stopped mid-swipe. "You remember me?" he said, smiling a little. "Not many people do." "I remember," she said with a small smile. "You shared your food with me. Not many people do that either." He chuckled. "Well, I didn't want to clean up after you if you fainted again." She laughed softly, the sound light and pleasant. "You joke a lot." "Helps the time go by," Eli said, leaning on his mop. "What brings you down here again? Lost your way a second time?" "Not this time," she said. "I came to see you." That caught him off guard. "Me? Why?" "I wanted to ask you more questions," she said, stepping closer. "About humans? About how you live, how you think, why you smile even when your life seems difficult?" Eli raised an eyebrow. "You make it sound like we're some kind of mystery." "Maybe you are," she said softly. "You live in the shadows of other species and yet, you don't give up." He shrugged. "That's just what we do. We've been knocked down a lot, but we always get up again. It's not bravery. It's just habit." Mara looked at him closely as if trying to read something behind his words. "And you? Do you ever wish for more?" Eli thought about it. "Sometimes. But I've learned not to hope for too much. It makes things easier." She frowned slightly as if she didn't like that answer. "You clean these halls every day. You serve others. But you still help strangers. You still smile. That's not weakness, Eli. That's strength." He laughed. "You sound like my grandmother. She used to say the same thing." "Your grandmother sounds wise." "She was," Eli said. "And stubborn. Guess that's where I get it from." Mara's eyes softened. She seemed lost in thought for a moment. "Do you ever miss your world?" "Earth," he said quietly. "Sometimes. But I never really knew it. I was born out here on another station. My parents talked about blue skies and green forests, but I've only seen them in pictures." He paused, then smiled faintly. "I figure the stars are our forests now. Just colder." Mara nodded slowly. "I have seen your world once, from orbit. It is beautiful. Quiet in a way most planets are not." Eli looked at her, puzzled. "You've been near Earth?" "Yes," she said simply. "A long time ago." Before he could ask more, a group of alien traders passed by, laughing loudly. Mara stepped aside quickly, turning her face away. When they were gone, she relaxed again. "You don't like being seen down here, do you?" Eli asked. "It's not that," she said carefully. "It's just better if people don't notice me." He nodded. "I get that. Being invisible has its perks." Over the next week, Mara kept visiting him. Sometimes she helped him sweep, though she clearly didn't know how. Other times she simply watched, asking quiet questions about human customs. She wanted to know why humans sang even when sad, why they told jokes during hard times, why they cared for others who had nothing to offer in return. Eli tried to answer as best he could, though he didn't really understand it himself. I guess it's just the way we are, he said once. If you stop caring, what's left? Mara listened carefully every time he spoke. She seemed fascinated by every small detail, how humans traded small favors, how they shared stories to pass time, how they found joy in tiny things like a warm drink or a song played on an old radio. One day Eli brought her a cup of station tea, a bitter, recycled liquid that most people hated. You should try this, he said. It's the closest thing we have to comfort out here. Mara took a sip and winced. It's terrible. Exactly, Eli said, grinning. That's why it's special. You drink it and you remember life could be worse. She laughed and it echoed softly down the empty corridor. For a moment she didn't look like a maid or a stranger. She looked almost human. But that same night, far above the lower decks, the upper halls of Eden 9 buzzed with tension. The Valyrian envoys were searching quietly but urgently. Their queen, Marin of Valyria, had vanished from her quarters over a week ago. The guards whispered that she had taken a new form, that she had gone to see the humans herself. No one dared speak of it loudly, but the fear in their eyes said everything. Down below, Eli walked Mara to the maintenance bay as usual. You sure you're supposed to be down here all the time? He asked. You might get in trouble. I can take care of myself, she said. And I like it here. It's peaceful. He nodded. That's one word for it. Then something strange happened. A technician passed by and nodded at Eli, then looked at Mara with a brief glance. For a split second, the man froze, as if recognizing something about her, but then quickly walked away. Eli didn't notice. But Mara did. Her posture stiffened, her smile faded for a moment. She looked almost worried. Everything okay? Eli asked. Yes, she said quickly. I just remembered something I must do soon. The next day she didn't come. Nor the day after. Eli told himself she'd gone back to her duties, wherever those were. Still, he found himself glancing down the corridors, hoping to see those silver eyes again. On the fourth day she returned. This time she looked different, her eyes dimmer, her voice quieter. Eli, she said, I may not be able to come back for a while. Trouble? He asked. Something like that, she said softly. But before I go, I want to tell you something. The day you shared your food, it meant more than you think. He laughed awkwardly. It was just a ration bar. To you maybe, she said. To me, it was a reminder that there is still goodness in this universe. She looked down at her hands, then back at him. You should know, Eli Turner, you've done something rare. You made someone remember what it means to be kind. Eli smiled, though he didn't really understand. I'm just a janitor, Mara. She shook her head gently. No. You're human. With that, she turned and walked away, her steps light and quiet. Eli watched her go, wondering what she really meant. Up in the highest chambers of the station, Queen Marin stood before a mirror of liquid light. Her attendants waited outside, unaware she had returned. She looked at her reflection, the disguise fading slowly, the silver glow of her true self returning. Her mind replayed the image of a tired janitor offering his last meal to a stranger in the dark. In 1,000 years of rule, she had never seen anything quite like that. For the first time in a long while, the Queen of Valyria smiled, not as a ruler, not as a conqueror, but as someone who had been touched by something simple and true. The E&D Part 2. The alarm started in the middle of Eli's shift. At first he thought it was another drill. The station had them often, some broken valve or a faulty pressure seal that made everyone panic for a few minutes before things went back to normal. But this time the alarm didn't stop. It grew louder, sharper, echoing through every deck until the whole station seemed to shake. Eli dropped his mop and looked around. Red lights flashed across the ceiling. The usual soft hum of the engines turned into a deep rumble that made the floor tremble under his boots. Over the intercom, a voice shouted something about an incoming attack. Then static. He had seen small fights before, smugglers trying to break into cargo bays or gangs stealing supplies, but never anything like this. When the sound of explosions rolled through the hull, he knew this was different. The pirates had come. Eden 9 was a rich station filled with trade goods and technology, but its defense systems were old. It was a perfect target. Panic spread quickly. Eli watched as people ran through the corridors, workers, traders, even guards, each one trying to reach the upper decks or the escape pods. He could have joined them. He almost did. But then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw someone he recognized. A flash of silver eyes in the crowd. Mara. She was pushing through the chaos, looking lost again, but this time there was real fear in her face. A group of armed men rounded the corner behind her, their armor marked with a skull symbol that everyone on the station knew too well. Pirates. Eli didn't think. He ran. Mara, he shouted. She turned, her face full of surprise. Before she could say anything, he grabbed her hand and pulled her down a side corridor. Come on. This way. They ran past broken panels and flickering lights, the sound of boots and shouting growing closer behind them. Eli's lungs burned, but he didn't stop. They turned into an old maintenance tunnel, a place he knew well from years of cleaning. Eli slammed the door shut behind them and locked it. The noise outside grew louder, then faded. For a few seconds they just stood there, breathing hard. Are you hurt? He asked. She shook her head. No. But you shouldn't have come for me. You could have died. He smiled faintly. Would have been a boring shift anyway. Even in the dark, he could see the confusion in her eyes. You risked your life for me. Why? Because that's what people do, he said simply. We help each other. Before she could answer, the tunnel wall shook. A blast hit the other side of the station, sending dust raining from the ceiling. Eli grabbed her arm to steady her. We need to move. The emergency bay's 2 levels down. They started walking again, slower this time, careful not to make noise. The tunnels were narrow, filled with old wires and rusting pipes. Every few meters, the lights flickered, giving them short bursts of pale light before darkness returned. Eli could hear his own heart pounding. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't brave. But he couldn't leave her behind, not after everything. Then suddenly the tunnel door in front of them opened with a loud hiss. 3 pirates stood there, their rifles raised. Found you, one of them growled. Eli stepped in front of Mara without thinking. She's not who you want, he said quickly. Take me instead. The pirate laughed. Oh, we'll take you too. He aimed his weapon. Eli grabbed the closest thing he could find, a long metal handle from a broken cleaning drone. It wasn't a real weapon, but it was something. He swung it as the first pirate lunged. The hit connected with a clang, knocking the man backward. The others fired, but the narrow tunnel made it hard to aim. Sparks flew from the walls. Run! Eli shouted. But Mara didn't run. She stepped forward, her eyes suddenly bright, too bright. A strange glow shimmered across her skin, silver and white, like light breaking through glass. The pirates froze, startled. Eli turned to look at her and felt his breath catch. She didn't look human anymore. The disguise was falling away. The light around her grew until it filled the tunnel. The pirates screamed, dropping their weapons as the energy surged through the air. A wave of invisible force rushed forward, throwing them off their feet and slamming them into the walls. When the light faded, the corridor was silent. Eli stood there shaking. The pirates were gone. Only dust and the smell of burnt metal remained. Mara, he whispered. She turned toward him, but she wasn't Mara anymore. Her form shimmered, the false skin dissolving into silver light. Her hair floated as if caught in water, and her eyes burned with a soft glow. I didn't want you to see this, she said quietly. Her voice was the same but carried an echo, deeper and more powerful. Eli took a step back, then stopped. You're not human? No, she said. I am Marin, Queen of Valyria. He stared at her, not sure if he should bow or run. Queen? He repeated dumbly. You mean, a real one? Yes, she said, her tone gentle. I came here in disguise to learn about your kind. To see if the stories were true. Stories? That humans still have hearts strong enough to care for others, even when they have nothing. And you proved them true. She looked down almost shyly. You shared your last meal with me. No one has done that in a long time. Eli blinked, trying to understand. The woman he'd thought was a maid was actually the ruler of one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. And he had given her a ration bar. He laughed softly, a bit dizzy. Well, he said, guess I should have bowed before I offered food. Her lips curved into a smile, warm and real. No, she said. That's what makes it special. The station shook again, harder this time. The emergency lights flickered. Over the intercom, someone shouted that the pirates had breached the command sector. Marin turned toward the noise, her expression turning cold and focused. Stay here, Eli. Like hell, he said. You'll get yourself killed. I am not so easy to kill, she said, and the glow around her brightened again. The air itself seemed to hum as she walked toward the door. You've done enough. Now it's my turn. Eli tried to follow, but the blast door sealed shut behind her. Through the small window, he saw her step into the main corridor where a dozen pirates waited. They raised their weapons. The next second, the entire hallway was filled with light. The explosion that followed wasn't fire, it was soundless, pure energy. When the light faded, the pirates were gone and Marin stood alone, her silver form shining in the smoke. Then everything went black. When Eli woke up, he was lying on the floor, his head throbbing. The air was thick with dust. The alarms had stopped. Through the cracked door he could see her, standing tall, calm and untouched. She turned when she heard him stir. Her glow dimmed a little as she knelt beside him. "You're alive," she said softly. "Barely," he groaned. "Remind me not to get between you and an angry crowd again." She smiled faintly. "You saved me before Eli Turner. It was only fair I returned the favor." He stared at her, still dazed. "So, what happens now? You go back to being a queen and I go back to mopping floors?" Her eyes softened. "Nothing will be the same now. For either of us." He smiled weakly. "Figures. I finally have an interesting day at work, and it ends with me fainting in front of royalty." She laughed quietly, a sound that felt brighter than all the lights in the broken tunnel. Outside, the station's defense ships arrived, driving off the last of the pirates. Rescue teams moved through the halls, searching for survivors. But none of them saw what Eli had seen. None of them would ever believe that the quiet janitor from the lower decks had stood beside a queen made of light. As the dust settled, Eli looked up at her one last time. "Guess I really should have bowed first." Marin smiled gently. "No, Eli. You did something far greater." And in that moment, surrounded by the wreckage of the station, he believed her. Eli woke up in a room that didn't look like any part of Eden 9 he had ever seen before. The ceiling was high and bright, made of smooth glass panels that glowed softly. The air smelled clean, not like the oil and dust of the lower decks. He blinked a few times, trying to remember what had happened. He was lying on a medical bed. His arm was wrapped in bandages and his side hurt every time he moved. Machines hummed quietly beside him, their lights blinking in calm rhythm. For a few moments he thought maybe he was dreaming. Then he saw the guards. Two tall figures stood near the door, wearing silver armor that shimmered like liquid. Their eyes followed every movement he made. Eli frowned. He had seen uniforms like that once in a news broadcast. They belonged to the Valyrian Royal Guard. He sat up slowly. Am I under arrest or something?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Neither of them answered. Instead, the door opened and a soft light spilled in. It was her. Marin stepped into the room, no longer hiding behind the simple clothes of a maid. She wore a long white robe trimmed in silver, and her hair glowed faintly like threads of light. Even so, her face was calm, gentle, almost human. Eli blinked at her, still trying to make sense of it all. "So it's true, huh?" he said quietly. "You really are a queen." She smiled faintly. "Yes. I am Marin of Valyria. And you, Eli Turner, are very lucky to be alive." He chuckled weakly. "Yeah, well, I'm not sure my mop made it." Marin laughed softly. It was the same laugh he had heard when she was still pretending to be a maid. Somehow, it made her seem less like a queen and more like the woman he had shared food with in a dark hallway. "You saved me," she said, stepping closer. "You fought armed men with nothing but a broken handle. You risked your life without knowing who I was." "I didn't really have time to think," he said. "Besides, you looked like you needed help." Her expression softened. "You gave help when others would have walked away. That is something my people have forgotten." Eli leaned back on the bed. "So what now? You going to wipe my memory? Lock me up for knowing your secret?" At that, her smile faded. "There are some who wish to do that," she admitted. "They say a human should not know the face of their queen. They say it is dangerous." "Sounds about right," Eli muttered. "People love their rules." She looked at him for a long time before speaking again. "But I will not allow it. You saved my life. That means something to me, and it should mean something to the galaxy." Eli frowned. "What do you mean?" Before she could answer, the doors opened again. A group of tall figures entered, their robes covered in strange silver symbols. They bowed slightly to Marin, but their eyes were cold. One of them spoke in a deep, careful voice. "Your Majesty, the Council of Valyria awaits your decision regarding the human. Protocol requires that he be relocated and—" "He stays," Marin interrupted softly but firmly. The official hesitated. "Your Majesty, that would break." "Enough," she said, her voice suddenly sharp. "I will not hide the truth from my people. What I have seen among the humans deserves to be known." Eli sat there, completely lost. He wasn't sure what was happening, but he could tell it was serious. Later that day they took him to a great hall. It was vast and filled with light, every wall lined with silver banners. Strange beings of all kinds sat in curved rows, whispering to one another. Eli had never seen so many powerful creatures in one place. And at the center, on a raised platform, stood Marin. When she spoke, her voice filled the entire chamber. "My people," she began, "I left my throne in secret to learn the truth of those we rule. I walked among the humans who live on our stations and serve our empire. I saw their struggle, their hunger, and their quiet endurance." Her words echoed off the walls. The audience grew still. "I met one such human," she continued, her eyes finding Eli in the crowd. "He shared his last food with me when I was in need, not knowing who I was. He fought to protect me when I was in danger, though he could gain nothing from it. In him I found what we have lost: honor, compassion, and the will to care for others." The whispers started again, louder this time. Some looked shocked, others angry. A tall alien stood up. "Your Majesty, with respect, these creatures are beneath us. They are workers, not warriors. They do not understand duty." Marin turned toward him. Her expression was calm, but her eyes burned like stars. "You are wrong," she said. "Humans understand duty better than anyone. They serve without praise. They endure without thanks. They still show kindness when the galaxy gives them none in return." The hall fell silent again. Even the guards seemed unsure what to do. Marin lifted her hand, and the air shimmered with silver light. "From this day forward, humanity will no longer be treated as lesser. The humans of the Dominion will have the right to choose their leaders, to work for themselves, and to live without chains. They will stand as free people under the protection of Valyria." The hall erupted in noise. Some shouted in protest, others in disbelief. Eli just stood there stunned. He had never asked for anything like this. He didn't even know what to say. He wasn't a hero. He was just a janitor who had shared a meal and done what he thought was right. When the council meeting ended, Marin approached him again. Her guards stayed back, giving them a moment of quiet. "You've changed everything," she said softly. He shook his head. "No. You did. You're the one with the power." "I have power," she said, "but you have something greater. You reminded me of what it means to use that power with kindness." Eli smiled a little. "You make it sound like I did something big." "You did," she said simply. "You made me see the truth." He looked around the grand hall, then back at her. "So what happens to me now? I don't exactly fit in up here." She smiled. "You can go back to your work if you wish. Or you can stay. I could use someone to remind me not to forget what I've learned." Eli laughed. "A queen's janitor, huh? Doesn't sound so bad." "Not a janitor," she said. "A friend." He didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. In the following days, news spread across the galaxy. The story of the human janitor who had saved the Valyrian queen traveled faster than light. Some called it a miracle, others a lie. But on Eden 9, everything changed. Humans began to walk with their heads held higher. Aliens greeted them with something close to respect. Eli went back to his work. The same floors, the same mop, the same smell of metal and cleaning fluid. But now when people passed him, they didn't look away. Some even smiled. One evening, as he was finishing his shift, he heard soft footsteps behind him. He turned and saw her again, not in royal robes, but in the simple gray uniform she had worn the first day they met. "Back to old habits?" he teased. She smiled. "Sometimes it's good to remember where things began." She handed him a small packet. Inside was a ration bar, just like the one he had shared with her. "Fair trade," she said. He looked at it, then at her, and laughed quietly. "You know," he said, "I think I liked you better when I didn't know who you were." She smiled. "Maybe that's why I like you, Eli Turner. You saw me as a person, not a crown." They sat together for a while, watching the lights of ships passing by through the station windows. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The galaxy outside was still dangerous and divided, but something had changed. A small act of kindness in a dark hallway had grown into something much larger, something that might last for generations. And somewhere deep in the heart of Eden 9, the janitor who once thought no one noticed him smiled quietly, knowing that sometimes, even the smallest person can change the course of the stars. The station was quieter now. Months had passed since the attack, and the scars of the battle were slowly fading. New lights glowed along the halls, the walls repaired and polished. Even the air smelled cleaner. For once, Eden 9 didn't feel like a forgotten corner of the galaxy. Eli Turner walked his usual route, mop in hand, humming softly to himself. Some things never changed, and he liked it that way. He still worked the same shift, cleaning the lower decks and fixing broken things no one else cared about. But the people around him had changed. When he passed alien traders, they nodded at him politely. The security officers called him Sir, even though he told them not to. There was even a small plaque near the main corridor now, a simple metal plate that read, "To Eli Turner, who reminded the stars what kindness means." He pretended not to notice it most of the time. He didn't like attention. But sometimes when no one was around he looked at it and smiled a little. Life on Eden 9 had settled into peace again. Humans were treated better now. They worked fair hours, got proper food, and even had their own small section on the upper decks. It wasn't much, but it was freedom. And sometimes in quiet moments Eli thought of her. Queen Marin had returned to her empire after the battle. Her duties were endless: councils, treaties, ceremonies. Eli knew someone like her couldn't stay in one place for long. Still, he missed her visits. The way she had smiled when she didn't understand a joke. The way she listened when he spoke as if every word mattered. He was finishing his last round when he heard footsteps behind him. Light and measured. He didn't need to turn to know who it was. "I was beginning to think you'd forgotten about this side of the station," Eli said, smiling. "I could never forget," said a familiar voice. He turned, and there she was, wearing the same simple gray uniform she had worn the first time they met. No crown, no robe, no glowing light. Just Mara again. "You shouldn't be here without an escort," he teased. "What if someone recognizes you?" "They won't," she said. "Besides, I wanted to see the place where it all began." She looked around the corridor. "It hasn't changed much." "Some things don't need to," Eli said. He leaned on his mop, studying her. "You've been busy, I hear. Making big speeches, changing laws, saving worlds." She smiled. "I'm trying. The council still fights me on everything. But things are changing. Slowly." "Slow's better than nothing," he said. "That's how humans do it. One small step at a time." She walked closer, her silver eyes soft. "I missed these talks." "Yeah," he said quietly. "Me too." For a moment neither of them spoke. The hum of the station filled the silence, steady and familiar. Then Marin reached into a small pouch at her side and pulled something out. A ration bar wrapped neatly in silver foil. She held it out to him. "What's this?" he asked, smiling. "Fair trade," she said gently. "You shared your last meal with me. I thought I should return the favor." Eli took it, laughing. "You remembered." "I remember everything," she said. "Every word you spoke. Every small kindness. You taught me that strength is not in power but in compassion." He shook his head. "I just gave someone a snack." "No," she said softly. "You gave someone hope." They sat on the floor together, leaning against the cool metal wall, and split the bar in half, just like before. The taste hadn't changed. It was still dry and chalky, but they both laughed as they chewed it anyway. Marin looked around. "You know, when I first came here I thought this station was ugly. All metal and noise. But now, I think it's beautiful." Eli smiled. "It's not the place that's beautiful. It's the people." She nodded, her expression softening. "You're right." A group of workers passed by, chatting loudly, and for a moment, no one paid attention to the quiet human and the disguised queen sitting on the floor. It felt peaceful, almost ordinary. Eli looked at her again. "Do you ever wish you could stay like this, Mara?" "Every day," she said. "But my people need their queen. And you need your peace." "Peace is overrated," he said, grinning. "Gets boring after a while." She laughed. "Then maybe I'll visit more often. To make sure you don't get bored." "I'd like that," he said simply. They sat there for a long time, sharing quiet conversation. She asked him about his days, the small changes on the station, and the stories people told about the janitor who saved a queen. Eli told her most of them were exaggerated. In one version he supposedly fought off a dozen pirates with nothing but a wrench. Marin laughed until tears formed in her eyes. "You've become a legend, Eli Turner." "Yeah," he said. "And I still can't get anyone to refill the cleaning supplies on time." As they talked, the lights dimmed slightly, night cycle beginning. Through a small viewport in the wall, the stars stretched endlessly, bright and silent. Marin turned toward them, her reflection faint in the glass. "When I was young," she said quietly, "I believed the galaxy belonged to those with power. But you showed me something different. You showed me that even the smallest act can change the path of the stars." Eli looked at her, then at the stars beyond. "I think the galaxy belongs to anyone willing to take care of it," he said. "Even if it's just sweeping one corner clean." She smiled. "Spoken like a true philosopher." He shrugged. "Just a janitor." For a while they sat in silence again. Then she stood, brushing off her hands. "I must go. They'll notice my absence soon." He nodded, though he didn't want her to leave. "You know where to find me." She hesitated for a moment, then reached out and placed a small silver token in his hand. It shimmered faintly in the dim light. If you ever need anything, show this to any Valyrian ship. They'll know who you are. He turned the token over in his fingers. Feels a bit heavy for a janitor. Then consider it a reminder, she said softly, that even small hands can hold the weight of great things. She stepped back and for a second the air around her shimmered, her disguise fading just enough for him to see the faint silver glow beneath. Then she smiled, turned and walked down the corridor, her footsteps fading into the hum of the station. Eli watched her go, the token still warm in his hand. He didn't call after her. He knew she had a galaxy to rule. And yet, he also knew she would return, because some promises didn't need words. He looked out at the stars once more, their light reflecting off the glass. Somewhere out there, a queen remembered a janitor's kindness. Somewhere, a story was being told, of a man who shared his last meal and changed the fate of two worlds. Eli smiled to himself. Guess I'll keep a spare ration bar just in case, he murmured. Then he picked up his mop and went back to work, the soft hum of the station echoing around him like a heartbeat. The stars outside burned brighter than ever, and in that endless light, one small act of kindness continued to shine.